The night was cold. The ruins stood silent under a pale moon. Stone walls were cracked, steel beams bent, and the streets were covered with dust. No birds sang here, no wind passed through. It was a place that felt forgotten by the galaxy. A lone man walked through these ruins, his boots pressed softly against the broken ground. His coat was old, his eyes tired, but his steps did not stop. He carried no banner, no flag, no pride. He was only a wanderer searching for a place to rest. Every step echoed like a memory of war. Long ago, this place had been full of voices, children laughing, merchants shouting, families gathering. Now it was nothing but shadow. The man tightened his grip on the small bag slung over his shoulder. Inside were only dry bread, a knife, and a half-empty water flask. He had learned to survive with little. But tonight felt different. The air carried something heavy, something alive. He stopped. A sound, very soft, almost like a whimper. The man turned. His eyes searched the broken houses. At first he thought it was just the wind, but then he heard it again, faint, trembling, almost too small for the silence around him. A child's voice. He froze. His heart beat faster. No one should be alive here, not after the attack, not after the soldiers burned everything down. Cautious, he stepped closer to the ruined archway of an old building. The sound was clearer now, a muffled cry. He pushed aside a slab of stone. Dust fell. Behind the rubble, in the shadows, two glowing eyes stared back at him. The man drew his knife by instinct, but then he stopped. It was a girl, small, thin, her clothes torn and covered with dirt. Her skin was pale blue, faintly glowing in the dark. Her hair was silver, tangled with dust. Her body shook as she tried to push herself back, afraid of him. The man's chest tightened. She was not human, she was alien, but her eyes were filled with the same fear, the same hunger, the same loneliness that he had seen in many children, human or not. For a moment, both stayed still. The ruin around them seemed to hold its breath. The girl's lips moved. Her voice was broken, weak, but he heard it. "Will you be my father?" The man blinked, shocked. His knife almost slipped from his hand. "What?" His voice came out rough, after days of silence. The girl stared at him, trembling. Tears rolled down her cheeks, cutting paths through the dust on her face. "Please," she whispered again, her voice so soft it almost vanished. "Will you be my father?" The man stepped back, as if struck. Father? Why those words? He wanted to walk away. This was not his fight. This was not his blood. He was no savior, no hero. He was only a wanderer. But her eyes held him there, eyes that had seen too much pain for one so small. He lowered the knife slowly. The girl crawled forward, her knees weak, her hands clutching at the broken floor. She reached out with shaking fingers. The man's throat felt tight. He remembered another pair of small hands, human hands, long ago, a daughter he had lost, a memory he had buried under stone and silence. His jaw clenched. He looked away, trying to push the memory down, but the girl's voice dragged him back. "They said, Father will come back. They said he will save me." She coughed, her tiny body shaking. "You came, so you must be him." The man stood frozen. The wind stirred the dust, carrying her words into his ears again and again. He could turn now. He could walk away. No one would blame him. The galaxy was not kind. To survive, one had to harden the heart. But his feet would not move. Finally, he knelt. His eyes met hers. The girl's tears slowed, as if she was not sure if he was real or only another ghost. "Eat," the man said quietly. He pulled a piece of dry bread from his bag. He held it out. The girl stared at it, then at him. Slowly, with trembling hands, she reached and took it. She bit into it like it was the first food she had tasted in days. The man watched her. Something stirred inside him, something he thought had died long ago. He sighed. His shoulders sagged. "I am not your father," he said. But the girl shook her head, her mouth still full of bread. "You came," she whispered. "So you are." The man looked at her again. Her eyes glowed in the moonlight, filled with fragile hope. Hope that did not belong in this broken place. His chest ached. The night grew colder. Strange sounds echoed far away. The ruins were not safe. The man rose, scanning the shadows. He tightened his grip on the knife again, but this time, not for himself, for her. He glanced down. She was already leaning against his coat, her eyes closing, as if she believed she was safe now. The man did not move for a long time, and when he finally did, he knew one thing. He could not walk away. The man did not sleep that night. He sat by the doorway of the ruined shelter, his knife in hand, his eyes fixed on the dark street outside. The stars above were cold and distant, as if they had turned away from this world long ago. Inside the broken room, the little alien girl lay curled in a corner. Her small body trembled even in her sleep, as if fear still chased her in dreams. The man stared at her. He did not know what to do. He was no father. He was no protector. He had promised himself long ago never to feel this pain again. And yet, he had not walked away. Every time he looked at her face, dirty but soft, fragile but alive, something pulled inside him. When the first light of dawn broke over the ruins, the girl stirred. She opened her glowing eyes, blinking at him. For a moment, confusion filled her gaze. Then, she smiled faintly. "You stayed," she whispered. The man said nothing. She sat up slowly, her arms wrapped around herself. Her voice was small. "I thought maybe you would be gone." He gave a tired sigh. "I should be." "But you're not," she said, tilting her head. Her silver hair caught the weak sunlight, glowing faintly like threads of light. The man looked away. He pulled the water flask from his bag and held it out. "Drink." She took it with both hands, sipping carefully, as if each drop was precious. Then she offered it back, her big eyes watching him. He shook his head. "Keep it. You need it more." The girl hugged the flask to her chest. She seemed to relax, as though the small act of kindness was enough to tell her she was safe. "What's your name?" the man finally asked. She hesitated, then spoke softly. "Lyra." The man nodded. He did not give his own name. Names were weight, and weight was dangerous in times like this. Lyra studied him. Her eyes were bright, but there was sadness buried deep within them. "What's yours?" He stayed silent. She frowned a little. Then, "I'll call you father." The word stabbed his heart like a blade. He turned his face away, his jaw tightening. He wanted to tell her no. He wanted to say it was wrong. But when he opened his mouth, no words came. Instead, he stood. "Come, we can't stay here." Lyra looked around nervously. "Why?" "Because others will come," he said. His tone was flat, but his eyes scanned the streets with sharp focus. "Hunters don't leave survivors." The girl's small hands gripped her torn dress. Her voice trembled. "They already came. They took my mother. They said, they'll come back." The man's chest tightened. He did not answer. Instead, he motioned for her to follow. Lyra rose weakly, stumbling a little. The man caught her arm before she fell. She looked up at him with trust, and for a moment, his hand lingered longer than it should have. Together, they moved through the ruins. Broken towers loomed above them, shadows stretching like long claws. The man's eyes stayed sharp. Every sound in the distance set his muscles on edge. Lyra walked close, sometimes grabbing his coat as if afraid he would vanish. After a while, she spoke again. "Why do you help me?" The man did not answer. "You could leave," she said softly. Others left. Her words pressed against his silence like small fists against a locked door. Finally, he muttered, "Because I didn't." It was not a full answer, but for the girl, it was enough. They found shelter in another broken hall. The roof was half gone, sunlight spilling through cracks. The man checked every corner before letting her sit down. Lyra curled up, watching him. Her voice was small. "You remind me of him." "Of who?" "My real father," she whispered. "He said, if he could not return, someone else would come. Someone strong. Someone who would never leave me." The man froze. The words hung in the air like smoke. Her small hands reached into her pocket. From it, she pulled a crystal. It glowed faintly, pulsing with light like a heartbeat. She held it out with trembling fingers. "He told me to keep this safe, to give it only to the one who will protect me." The man stared at the crystal. Its light reflected in his eyes. It was no ordinary stone. He could feel power humming inside it. "What is it?" he asked. Lyra shook her head. "I don't know. Only that it matters. Father said it is the key. The soldiers wanted it. That's why they—" Her voice broke. She pressed the crystal back against her chest, hugging it tightly. The man's hand itched to take it, but he stopped himself. Instead, he said, "Keep it hidden. Never show it again." Lyra nodded, her eyes wide. "Yes, Father." Again, the word pierced him. He wanted to correct her. He wanted to shout that he was not her father. But when he looked at her small, fragile form, alone, trembling, yet still holding on to hope, he stayed silent. Outside, a sudden noise echoed. Heavy steps, voices speaking in harsh tones. "Soldiers." The man grabbed her hand quickly, pulling her close. His knife was in his other hand. He pressed a finger to his lips. Lyra's eyes filled with fear, but she nodded. She clung to him, her tiny body pressed against his side. The footsteps drew nearer, stones crunching under boots. Shadows moved across the broken wall. The man's heartbeat thundered. He held her tighter. For the first time in years, he felt it again, the fire of responsibility, not for himself, but for the child who now called him father. The voices faded, moving away into the ruins. The danger passed. The man exhaled slowly, lowering the knife. He looked down. Lyra was still holding on, her face buried against his coat. In that moment, he knew something had already changed. He had not walked away, and perhaps he never would. The night returned quickly. In the ruins, shadows grew deeper, stretching across broken walls like black rivers. The man led Lyra into an old underground passage, its entrance hidden by fallen stone. The tunnel was damp, smelling of rust and dust. Drops of water echoed as they fell into small puddles. Their footsteps were soft, yet each sound carried through the hollow space. The man moved first, knife in hand, his sharp eyes searching the darkness ahead. Behind him, Lyra followed closely, clutching her small crystal against her chest. She was silent, but her breathing trembled. At last, they reached a chamber where part of the ceiling had collapsed. Moonlight spilled through cracks, painting silver lines across the floor. The man stopped. "We rest here," he said. Lyra sank onto the ground, her body weary. She hugged her knees and looked around with wide eyes. "It's so quiet," she whispered. The man crouched by the wall, scanning the shadows. "Quiet isn't always safe," he muttered. For a time, neither spoke. Only the faint dripping of water filled the chamber. The man kept still, but his ears caught every sound beyond the stone walls. Distant movements, whispers carried by the wind. A clatter of boots somewhere far above. Lyra broke the silence first. "You don't talk much." The man didn't look at her. "Talking won't keep us alive." Her small voice pressed on. "But silence feels heavy, like the walls are listening." The man turned slightly, his tired eyes studying her. She sat in the pale glow of the crystal, her silver hair catching the light. Even here, even in this place of ruin, she seemed like a fragment of something pure. He looked away. "Then talk." Lyra hesitated. Her fingers traced the glowing stone. Then she whispered, "Do you know what this is?" The man's eyes narrowed. "No, but I know people are willing to kill for it." She hugged it tighter. "Father said it's the heart of our world, that inside it, there's a voice." The man frowned. "A voice?" "Yes," she said softly. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark. "When I sleep, I hear it, like a song. It tells me not to be afraid." The man leaned back against the wall, silent. He had seen strange weapons, strange machines in his lifetime, but a stone that spoke? That was beyond him. Lyra's gaze dropped. "Do you think I'm lying?" The man shook his head slowly. "No, but believing doesn't make it safe." She tilted her head, watching him. "You don't believe in hope, do you?" The man's jaw tightened. For a moment, he said nothing. Then his voice came low, heavy with memory. "Hope is what gets you killed." Lyra's eyes softened. She did not argue. Instead, she whispered, "My father believed in it. He believed someone would come for me, and you did." The man turned away, but her words struck him deep. He wanted to deny it. He wanted to tell her she was wrong, but the look in her eyes, pure, unwavering, was too strong. Suddenly, a noise. The man raised his hand sharply. Lyra froze. Heavy footsteps, close, voices speaking in harsh tones. The enemy had entered the tunnels. The man moved quickly, pulling Lyra against the wall. He pressed a finger to his lips. Her small hands clutched his coat as she buried her face against him, trembling. The footsteps drew nearer. Torchlight flickered through the cracks in the stone. The man's grip on his knife tightened. His heartbeat was steady, but his eyes burned with focus. The voices passed, echoing down another passage. The light faded. The danger moved away, for now. The man let out a slow breath. Lyra clung tighter to him. "They're looking for us," she whispered. "Yes," he said, "and they won't stop." Her eyes lifted to him, wide with fear. "Will you fight them?" The man hesitated. Long ago he had fought. Long ago he had killed, and what had it brought him? Loss, pain, silence. But Lyra's gaze cut through him like fire. "Father would have fought," she said quietly. The words burned. He looked away, but his jaw clenched. "I'm not your father." Her voice was small, but steady. "You are now." The chamber grew silent again. The man could not find words. His chest felt heavy, like chains pulling him down. Then Lyra shifted, reaching into her pocket. She pulled out the crystal again. It glowed brighter this time, pulsing with light. The man frowned. "Hide it." But Lyra shook her head. "No, it wants to show you." She held it out, and the glow filled the chamber. For a moment, the air vibrated, carrying a faint hum. It was like a whisper, too soft to understand, but enough to raise the hair on his neck. The man stared, caught between disbelief and awe. Lyra's eyes shone with tears. "See? It speaks." He wanted to deny it. He wanted to call it madness. But deep inside, he had heard it too. A faint voice, like a memory of something long forgotten. Before he could speak, the sound of boots returned, closer this time. The soldiers were back. The man's hand shot to his knife. His eyes sharpened. He pulled Lyra close, whispering low, "Stay silent. Stay behind me." The glow of the crystal dimmed as she pressed it against her chest. The chamber was no longer safe. The enemy was her. And for the first time in years, the man felt it again. Fear not for himself, but for someone else. He tightened his grip on the blade. If they came through that door, he would fight, not for pride, not for war. The first sound was boots, heavy, steady, and close. The man stiffened. Lyra felt it too. Her small hand clutched his sleeve, her breath trembling. The tunnel walls carried the sound, making it hard to tell from where the soldiers were coming. Left, right, behind. The echoes mixed together, pressing in like a cage. The man lowered himself, motioning for silence. Lyra nodded, pressing the glowing crystal tightly against her chest. Its faint light vanished under her fingers, leaving them in near darkness. Then, voices. Harsh, sharp, not human. The words twisted through the tunnels, their tone cold and cruel. The man pulled Lyra toward a broken passage, moving quickly but quietly. His boots barely touched the ground. The air grew colder as they slipped into a narrow path where stone walls pressed close around them. Lyra stumbled, her foot hitting a loose stone. It rolled, clattering against the wall. The voices stopped. Silence. Then a shout. The tunnel exploded with noise, boots slamming, weapons clicking, beams of light cutting through the dark. "They've seen us," the man hissed. He grabbed Lyra's hand and ran. The tunnel twisted and turned like a maze. Dust fell from the ceiling as shouts echoed behind them. The soldiers were faster than he expected, their lights bouncing closer with each turn. Lyra gasped for breath, her small legs struggling to keep up. The man lifted her into his arms without slowing, carrying her against his chest. Her tiny fingers clung to his coat as he ran. Shots rang out. Beams of red light sliced the darkness, striking the stone walls. Sparks flew, filling the air with heat and dust. The man ducked low, his body shielding Lyra. He turned sharply, slipping into another path, his breath heavy but controlled. "Hold on," he whispered. She buried her face against him, whispering back, "Don't say done. Leave me!" The words hit him like fire in his chest. His legs pushed harder, faster. But the soldiers were gaining. At last, the tunnel opened into a larger chamber. The moonlight spilled in through cracks in the broken ceiling above, casting silver shadows on the ground. The man stopped for a split second, scanning the space. There were 3 exits. Left, right, forward. Which one would lead out? Which one would trap them? Behind, the soldiers shouted again, their lights spilling into the chamber. The man chose forward. He sprinted across the chamber, carrying Lyra in one arm, his knife gripped in the other. More shots fired. A beam grazed his shoulder, burning through his coat. He gritted his teeth but didn't slow. Lyra gasped, her eyes wide. "You're hurt." "Not yet," he muttered, forcing his body forward. They dashed into the next tunnel. The air here was fresher, cooler. Somewhere ahead he could hear wind, an exit. But the footsteps behind grew louder. The soldiers were chasing hard. The tunnel narrowed, then opened again into a ruined street above. The man burst out into the night air, his boots crunching over shattered stone. The stars glittered coldly above them. For a heartbeat, he almost stopped to breathe. But then he saw them, shadows moving between the ruins. Soldiers, already circling. They had been driven here. The man's eyes darted across the broken street. To the left, collapsed buildings. To the right, a broken tower leaning like a dying tree. Ahead, a gap, narrow but open. He ran forward. Lyra clung to him, her breath shaking. "They're everywhere," she whispered. "Then we don't stop," he said, his voice firm. Shots rang out again. Dust exploded around them. The man ducked behind a fallen wall, his chest heaving. Lyra pulled at his sleeve. "The crystal. It can help." "No," he snapped. "Keep it hidden." "But hide it." His yes were sharp, harder than stone. She pressed it to her chest again, silent. The man peered over the rubble. Soldiers moved closer, spreading out to cut off their escape. He could not fight them all, not like this. But he could run. He turned sharply, lifting Lyra higher in his arms. He sprinted toward the leaning tower. The soldiers shouted, firing wildly. Stones cracked and fell as beams struck the old walls. The man leapt over rubble, his boots hitting hard, his muscles screaming. His breath burned, but he pushed on. The tower loomed ahead. Its base was cracked open, forming a narrow path. If they could slip through, maybe they could lose the soldiers in the maze of ruins beyond. "Hold tight," he whispered. Lyra nodded, her arms wrapping around his neck. They reached the base of the tower just as shots rained down behind them. The man dove inside, rolling across the ground with Lyra clutched close. Rubble crashed down, sealing part of the entrance. For now, they were hidden. The man pressed his back against the cold stone, breathing heavily. His body ached, his shoulder throbbed, but his grip on Lyra never loosened. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with fear, but also trust. "You didn't leave," she whispered. The man closed his eyes for a moment. Her words cut deep. No, he hadn't left, and he knew now he couldn't. Outside, the soldiers shouted, searching the ruins. Their boots crunched closer. The man opened his eyes, sharp and steady. He tightened his grip on the knife. This chase wasn't over. But for her, he would keep running. For her, he would keep fighting. For the girl who called him father. The tower's broken walls pressed around them like the ribs of a giant skeleton. Dust fell from above with every distant explosion. The man leaned against the stone, his chest rising and falling in heavy breaths. His shoulder still burned where the enemy shot had grazed him. Lyra sat close, holding the crystal tight against her chest. Its faint glow lit her face. Her small eyes, bright and uncertain, kept looking at him. "You're hurt," she whispered. The man shook his head. "I've had worse." His voice was steady, but inside he felt the pain. He had bled before, fought before, but never with someone depending on him. Lyra's hands trembled as she pressed the crystal into his palm. "Take it. Father said it must belong to the one who protects me." The man frowned, staring at the glowing stone. Its light pulsed softly, almost like a heartbeat. The warmth spread into his skin, sinking deeper than flesh, reaching bone. "No," he said, pushing it back. "It's not mine." But Lyra pushed harder, her voice shaking. "It is now. Please, I can't carry it alone." His jaw tightened. He wanted to refuse. The crystal was dangerous, too dangerous. Soldiers were hunting it. Anyone holding it was a target. But as he looked at her fragile hands, dirty and bruised, his resolve weakened. She could not run forever. She could not fight alone. The man slowly closed his fingers around the crystal. At once, the glow flared brighter, filling the chamber with silver light. Lyra gasped, her eyes wide. The man stiffened. The warmth grew stronger. A faint hum rose in the air, like a song without words. It moved through his chest, up his spine, into his mind. For a heartbeat, he thought he heard a voice, soft, distant, speaking in a language he didn't know. Then it stopped. The glow softened. The crystal lay still in his hand, its heartbeat now in rhythm with his own. Lyra's lips trembled. "It chose you." The man stared at it. "It's just a stone." But he knew it wasn't. Before he could say more, a crash shook the tower. Dust rained from above. Voices shouted outside. The soldiers were back, searching closer. Lyra's fear spilled out in her whisper. "They'll find us." The man clenched the crystal tighter. His knife was still in his other hand, but now he felt something else. Strength, heat, a spark he hadn't felt in years. He glanced at Lyra. Her eyes pleaded with him. "You'll fight them, won't you?" His chest tightened. Long ago, he had sworn never to fight again, never to bleed for someone else's war. He had buried that part of himself with the memories of his daughter. But here was Lyra, alone, afraid, looking at him as if he were her last hope. The soldier's boots thundered closer. Shadows shifted outside the crack in the wall. He had a choice. He could leave her, slip away into the dark, return to the life of silence he knew, or he could fight, risk everything, bleed again, protect the girl who called him father. Lyra's small hand slipped into his. "Please, don't walk away." The man looked down at her. Her silver hair caught the faint glow of the crystal. Her eyes shone with trust that cut deeper than any blade. The walls shook again as the soldiers forced their way into the tower. The man rose slowly. His figure loomed against the dim light, his grip steady on the crystal, his knife shining faintly. His voice came low, firm, unshaken. "I'm not walking away." Lyra's eyes filled with tears, but this time, they weren't only from fear. The tower's front wall cracked, falling in chunks. Soldiers poured inside, their weapons raised, their eyes locking onto the man and the child. The man stepped forward, the crystal glowing brighter in his hand. His heart pounded, but his steps were steady. He could feel it now, the strange power moving through him. The first soldier shouted and fired. The man lifted the crystal instinctively. A flash of light erupted. A barrier of pure energy spread before him, the blast striking it and vanishing like rain against glass. Both the man and the soldiers froze in shock. The man looked at his hand, at the glowing stone. He did not understand it, but he did not need to. Behind him, Lyra whispered in awe, "Father!" The soldier shouted again, regrouping. More shots came, bouncing harmlessly off the shield of light. The man's eyes hardened. He knew his choice was already made. With a growl, D-P in his chest, he rushed forward. The crystal's light flared, wrapping around him like armor. His knife slashed, his arms strong, his body moving with a fire he thought long dead. The soldiers staggered back, shouting, their lines breaking. Lyra watched with wide eyes as the man fought not for glory, not for victory, but for her. The chamber shook with battle, sparks flew, shouts echoed, dust rained. Through it all, the man's heart beat in rhythm with the crystal. He was no longer only a wanderer. He was protector, fighter, father. And as the soldiers began to retreat under the force of his charge, he realized something else. This was only the beginning. The ruins trembled with fire and steel. The man stood in the heart of the broken tower, the crystal glowing in his hand like a burning star. Around him, soldiers regrouped, shouting commands in their harsh alien tongue. Their weapons hummed with deadly light, aimed directly at him. But he no longer stepped back. He no longer thought of escape. He no longer felt only fear. For the first time in years, he felt alive, because the child behind him was watching, and he would not let her see him fall. Lyra crouched in the shadows, her hands over her mouth, her glowing eyes wide with awe and terror. The man had become a figure of light, wrapped in the shield of the crystal's power. A soldier barked and fired. A bolt of red light shot forward, but it broke against the barrier that surrounded the man. The sound was like glass shattering, but no harm touched him. The man's steps echoed as he advanced. One by one, the soldiers opened fire, the chamber filling with streaks of burning energy. But the shield held, bending the blasts into sparks that lit the darkness. The man's knife flashed. He moved faster than he thought possible, striking down the first soldier who came too close. The sound of metal against armor racked through the ruins. Another lunged from the side. The man turned, the crystal glowing brighter, and a wave of light burst outward. The soldier was thrown back, crashing into the broken wall. Lyra gasped, her small voice trembling. "Father!" The word gave him strength. He fought with fury, not the blind rage of war, but the steady fire of a man who had finally found a reason to stand. Each movement was sharp, controlled. His body, once weary, now carried new energy. The crystal's heartbeat matched his own, pushing him forward. But the soldiers were many. They spread out, circling him like wolves around a wounded prey. More blasts struck the shield, cracks of light spreading across it like spider webs. The man gritted his teeth. The power was strong, but not endless. "Stay down," he shouted to Lyra. His voice was firm, but she heard the edge of strain. She pressed herself lower, whispering prayers in her alien tongue, clutching the floor as the battle raged. The man pushed forward again, slashing, striking, his shield flashing brighter with every hit. But with each strike, the glow dimmed a little. Sweat dripped down his brow, his breath grew heavy. A soldier shouted, raising a heavy weapon. A blast of energy burst forth, stronger than the rest. The man barely had time to brace. The shield flared, cracked, then shattered. The force hurled him backward. He slammed into the stone floor, the knife skidding away. Lyra screamed. The soldiers surged forward. The man forced himself up, his vision swimming. The crystal still glowed faintly in his palm, but its light flickered, weaker now. His body shook, but he rose anyway, standing tall between the soldiers and the girl. "No more running," he growled. His voice was low, steady, unbroken. The soldiers laughed, a cold, cruel sound. They raised their weapons. Lyra's voice pierced the chaos. "Don't give up," she cried, tears falling down her cheeks. "You're my father! You can't leave me!" The man's chest tightened. Something inside him, something deeper than pain, deeper too. Fear, ignited. The crystal flared suddenly, blazing brighter than before. Its light poured across his body, wrapping him again in its shield. But this time, it was stronger, sharper, alive. The soldiers hesitated, their cruel laughter fading. The man stepped forward once more. His knife was gone, but his hand burned with the crystal's fire. He raised it, and a surge of energy exploded outward. The blast shook the chamber. Soldiers were thrown across the walls, their weapons flying from their hands. The ground itself cracked under the force. Lyra shielded her eyes from the light, her tears glowing in its silver rays. When the dust settled, the man stood alone in the center of the ruin. Around him, soldiers lay scattered, groaning, their weapons useless. The glow of the crystal dimmed slowly, its heartbeat calming in rhythm with his. The man's chest heaved, but his stance remained strong. Silence fell. Then the girl's small footsteps. Lyra ran to him, throwing her arms around his waist, her tiny body pressed against him as if he were the only solid thing left in the universe. "You didn't leave me," she whispered. The man lowered his hand, resting it gently on her silver hair. His voice was rough but steady. "I told you, I'm not walking away." For a moment, there was peace. But it did not last. Outside the tower, horns echoed in the night. More soldiers, a larger force. They had not been defeated, only delayed. The man's eyes lifted toward the sound. His jaw tightened. He had won this battle, but the war was only beginning. Lyra looked up at him, her eyes shining with trust. "Now, where do we go?" The man looked down at the crystal in his hand. Its glow was faint now, but he knew its power was far from gone. He looked toward the distant horizon, where the ruins ended and the stars began. "To the stars," he said quietly. Lyra smiled, her tears drying. Gia's hope returned. She nodded, her small fingers gripping his coat tighter. And in that moment, the man knew he was no longer only a wanderer. He was protector. He was father. And he would stand as long as he had breath. The night sky trembled with the sound of horns. The man stood at the broken mouth of the tower, the crystal faint in his hand, its glow pulsing like the last ember of a dying fire. Behind him, Lyra clung to his coat, her small eyes wide with fear. More soldiers were coming. The rumble of their march echoed through the ruins, their torches lighting the streets like rivers of fire. The man's grip tightened. He could fight again, but he knew the truth. He could not fight them all. Not forever. Lyra's soft voice broke through the night. "What do we do now?" The man turned his gaze upward. Beyond the smoke and shadows, the stars shone cold and bright. He remembered her words. "Father said this crystal is the key." Perhaps the answer was not here, on the ground, but above. "Come," he said. His voice was low, steady. "We don't stay here." He took her hand and led her through the ruins. The streets were broken, but his steps were strong. He moved with purpose now, not as a wanderer, but as someone carrying something greater than himself. The soldiers' shouts grew louder behind them. Torches lit the sky. They ran, through crumbled alleys, across shattered bridges, over the bones of a world long dead. Lyra stumbled once, her small legs weak, but the man lifted her into his arms without slowing. She clung to him, her cheek pressed against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. At last, they reached the edge of the ruins. There, half buried beneath stone and vines, lay a vast broken shape, a ship, ancient, cracked, but not dead. Its silver hull glimmered faintly under the starlight. Lyra gasped. "This is it," she whispered. "Father said the key would wake it." The man set her down gently. He stepped closer to the ship, his boots crunching against rubble. The hull was scarred with centuries of silence, but he felt the hum beneath it, a heartbeat waiting to return. Behind them, the soldiers drew closer. The sound of boots thundered. Shouts cut the air. "Quick," he said, pressing the crystal into the center of the ship's door. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, light. The crystal flared, brighter than ever before. The silver hull groaned, shifting, ancient gears grinding back to life. Dust rained down as the door split open, releasing a gust of air that smelled of forgotten worlds. Lyra's eyes shone. It worked! The man lifted her inside. The chamber glowed with faint lights, long dormant but now flickering awake. Consoles lit with alien symbols, humming with power. The soldiers shouted behind them, firing blasts into the ruins. The man ran deeper into the ship. The hall opened into a command room, its walls glowing faintly. At the center was a pedestal, waiting. He placed the crystal into it. At once the ship roared, lights burst alive, engines shaking the ground. The entire ruin trembled as the ancient machine prepared to rise again. Lyra held onto the chair beside her, her small voice trembling with awe. "We're going to the stars." The man stood steady, the light of the ship reflecting in his tired eyes. "Yes," he said. Outside, soldiers poured into the ruins, firing wildly at the ship. Explosions lit the night, but the silver hull absorbed the blasts like rain against stone. The engines blazed, dust and fire shot into the sky. The ground cracked as the ship rose, lifting from its grave. Lyra cried out in joy, her arms wrapping around the man. "We're free!" The soldiers below shouted, their torches and weapons useless now. The ruins fell away as the ship climbed higher, breaking through the smoke, reaching for the endless sky. The man placed a hand on the controls, steadying the vessel. His reflection glowed in the glass before him. For the first time in years, his face was not only shadow and scars, it carried something new. Hope. Lyra leaned against him, her voice soft. Thank you, Father. The word no longer cut him. It no longer felt like a wound. Instead, it filled the empty space inside him, the space that had been silent for too long. He placed a hand gently on her shoulder. I told you, I'm not walking away. The ship broke through the clouds. The stars spread wide before them. Endless, beautiful, alive. For the first time, the man felt the weight of the galaxy, not as a burden, but as a promise. Behind him lay ruins, war, and silence. Ahead of him lay a child who believed in him, a ship born from ancient light and a future yet unwritten. He was no longer a wanderer. He was protector. He was father. And together, they vanished into the galaxy, toward a new dawn.